Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Chaucer's Books virtual author discussion with Jeff Arch. My name is Michael Takeuchi, and I'm the events coordinator at Chaucer's Bookstore, a going on 47-year-old independent bookstore located in Santa Barbara, California. To purchase tonight's book attachments, other books, to check out our upcoming events, please go to our website at chaucersbooks.com. On Thursday, we welcome Sarah Dykman, who wrote Bicycling with Butterfly, a 10,000-mile journey by bicycle to track the migration of the monarch butterfly. On Monday, we welcome Jessica Anya Blau for her new novel, Mary Jane, where she'll be speaking with Joanna Rakoff. Followed by local author and brain trauma survivor, Kathleen Clawwitter, the next evening. Upcoming events include New York Times bestselling author Daniel James Brown, as well as an upcoming announcement of Hamiltonian proportions. I would also like to announce that our friends at UCSB Arts and Lectures are holding two free events people would want to check out beginning tomorrow, when Patrice Cullors talks about When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives Matter dialogue, part of the UCSB Reads program. And then on May 18th, our own resident treasure, Pico Iyer, will hold a free talk with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, about creating hope. While my guests and myself are the only ones seen and heard on this webinar, there is a Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen, so please feel free to utilize it, and time permitting, we hope to get to these questions. Tonight's event is being simulcasted and being recorded for our YouTube channel, and it will be available for viewing at the watcher's discretion shortly after. So here we go. Let's make sure our recording's on. Tonight, I thought it'd be fitting, wearing my Seattle sweatshirt, as Jeff noted, to finish our week of local authors, to bring on Jeff Arch, whose backstory is unique. As someone who worked production jobs backstage and fancies himself a writer, I was pleased to learn that Jeff got his writing career started while working lighting gigs for concerts, teaching himself how to write screenplays in between jobs. It's pretty hard to do when you're working your tail off backstage. And it's obviously paid off, as he wrote the screenplays for the movies Iron Will, Sealed with a Kiss, Dave Barry's Complete Guide to Guys, and of course his Oscar-nominated screenplay, Sleepless in Seattle. Among his many awards includes a 2005 Humanitas Prize nomination for his screenplay, Saving Millie. Now he does literary territory with the release of his first novel, Attachments, published by Spark Press. It's a terrific coming-of-age story that I'm thoroughly enjoying as we speak. So happy to have him with us. Please welcome Jeff Arch. Hi, Jeff.
Thank you. That sounded great. It doesn't sound like me to me, but it sounded pretty good. I'm really happy to be here.
Great. Well, it's great to have you. And if that wasn't enough of a treat, we're privileged to have as our interviewer the fabulous Christina Baker Kline. Christina is a #1 New York Times bestselling author of 8 novels, including Orphan Train, A Piece of the World, and most recently, The Exiles. Her books have been published in 40 countries, and among her honors include the New England Prize for Fiction, the Maine Literary Award, and the Barnes & Noble Discover Award. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, the New York Times Book Review, the Boston Globe, the San Francisco Chronicle, Psychology Today, and Slate. Thank you for joining us, Christina, and welcome.
I am so happy to be here with this amazing book and this amazing person.
Thank you.
All right.
We saw each other and we're done. That's it.
He's leaving us alone. I think he's leaving us alone. Is he going away? Can other people see him?
You're not done.
Okay.
Oh, we're not done. Okay, sorry.
We're not done.
No, you guys aren't done. I'm done.
Not done.
Oh, you're done. Okay, good.
There is an incredible little cool Italian cafe right around the corner from this bookstore. So I thought maybe he was going there while we talked.
That would be nice. That would be good. I love how he has your book visible on stage, on screen. Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here with Jeff Arch. I just want to tell you a little bit about how we met on the beautiful beaches of Kauai when we were both at the Kauai Writers Conference, where we were part of a group of writers who have gone on to sort of have lots of wonderful synergies, I guess you could say, with each other. And if anyone wants a really interesting writing conference to go to, the best one I've ever been to is the Kauai. Don't you agree, Jeff?
It was just the right size.
Yeah, it's the perfect size.
Kauai was
They're
just
really
right on.
nurturing. Yeah. And I want to talk to you more about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
He had like 200 people or so. So, you could just wander around. If you can imagine 20 tables now with 8 people at a table, you could just wander around and sit down in any empty seat. And that could be Scott Turow there. That could be Kristen Hanna. That could be Christina Baker Kline, and just talk to them. And usually we're a little hard to get to because we never leave home. And the publishers and agents are hard to get to because they're in offices with secretaries that try and keep people out. So it's just so casual. And who's in a bad mood in Kauai and those sunsets and all that. It was great. So you get to be friends really quickly. Kind of like a film set, you get to be friends just really quickly.
It is kind of like a film set. I was thinking that actually, and I was thinking that especially with this amazing book, Attachments. So first of all, I just want to say, if you haven't read it yet, you're in for a huge treat. If you've seen Jeff's movies like Sleepless in Seattle, you know how beautifully he does dialogue and character development, not to mention pacing and everything else. But this novel is a novel, and which makes it different. And it has these moments of real depth and beauty that are in which Jeff is really plumbing how we deal with memory and how people remember things differently, and how the secrets from our past inform our present and our future, and how we handle that. And Jeff, this is such a huge achievement. I mean, you could have gone your whole life without writing a novel. You do lots of other kinds of writing. So what led you to this?
Instead, I spent half of my life writing this novel. So, I have friends like you do who put out a book every year. And
I don't. Every 3 to 4 years at most.
Oh, that's a real slow pace, Christina.
No,
I told him that, I said, look, I write a book every year too, but it's just the same book. Mm-hmm. So, this is a story that's been in my head since 1988, and different, it would grow and just develop over the years. I'd take pot shots at it, and I did start it as a novel, as a screenplay, and didn't get a lot of traction, and I couldn't figure out why until I figured out why, which is that it wanted to be a book. Mm. So I looked at that.
What was it that made you see that? What is it that was actually one of my questions down the road, but I'll ask you now, what was it about this project that felt more like a novel, at least at first, than a screenplay? And maybe we should step back before you answer that, because I want you to tell people what the book is about.
Oh, no, you do that.
I mean, I can, but I feel like you, the author, probably have a better sense of that.
The book is about a boarding school dean and a kind of a gritty boarding school in Pennsylvania. And on page 1, he has a stroke. And before he passes out, he tries very hard to mention 2 names. And then he passes out. His wife knows who the people are, but she doesn't know why he called for them. His son doesn't know who they are and doesn't know why he called for them, just that he didn't call for him or his mother. And the whole book is trying to figure out, why he did this, but the only person who knows is in a coma the whole time. So all these characters have to be reassembled, and it's sort of like, it's like a potluck dinner. Everybody's bringing something to this dinner, and when they all get there, you're going to have a whole potluck dinner. But they're all kind of, the people he asked for were students from almost 20 years ago, 2 best friends, and one of them was in a relationship. And he was the guy she met first, but he wasn't the guy. So when the guy came along, the character Pick came along, these guys were meant for each other, but the boyfriend she already had was in the middle, and this is high school. But in terms of conscience, these two, Pick and Laura, while they are doing the right thing for as long as they can, they're falling in love. And that ends up, if teenagers and a miscommunication here is something there, a sneak out night into a dormitory, and one of the guys is betrayed and he runs away. And he's not heard from for 10 years when he writes a book about what happened. And the book is about to be a movie, and Laura gets in touch with him again, and she gives him a piece of information that makes him run away from that. And he goes off to Japan to study with a teacher of his, who was a monk who took him in when he was a runaway. And I think that's about as far as I can go.
Well, all of that is background, because the story, you do go, of course, you do go into the past, but we're propelled forward by, to me, it reminded me a little bit of, if we're going to stay with the movie theme, of The Big Chill, where everyone's gathering, everyone's coming around a central person who's sort of absent.
Yeah.
And so back to my original question, you must have, I mean, in that way, it is quite cinematic. There are many, certainly reading this as a novel with its short chapters and the dialogue that's snappy and interesting and the plot that moves along quickly, there are those elements that feel like a screenplay in some ways. Obviously, it doesn't read like a screenplay, but I can see that. And so how did that happen?
That's just part of the training. Screenplays, no matter what story you're telling, if it takes place on another planet or at a corner store, you get 100 pages or so, and that's it. And that teaches you an economy of style. That teaches you to use as few words as possible, to say as many things as possible. And also it teaches you to speak an image. So if I put images in your head instead of information in your head, they'll get to your emotions quicker. And I think it's the heart that reads the book, not the brain. You know, you dangle a story in front of the brain so that they'll stay with it. But what's really happening is underneath, heart to heart, between the author and the reader.
So what was it like to write this novel? How did, after coming out of your background, how did you start it? What did you start with?
I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
What do you mean of a hard job?
It's hard.
I had remembered, this is so crazy. I had a friend in high school who wrote a short story that I never forgot. And his short story used alternating voices. So this is like 1971 or something. And I thought, that is such a cool technique. I'm going to file that away in case I ever need to use it one day. And so a few years after we took this screenplay of the book off the market, and it started calling, and this story would not let go of me. And I've learned to listen to those kind of things. So I kept going back to, what is it about this? And then I thought two things. I was really tired of having my hands tied behind my back, that I can't get into somebody's head. In a screenplay, you can't say, Christina thought this. You have to show a behavior that shows Christina, and thank God we have great actors who can do that. But I wanted to get in there, and I want to do the kind of writing where you can get off the highway once in a while, and you have to get back on, but you can meander a little bit as long as you're moving forward in ways that you don't get to in a movie. And also, I just like this technique as a new toy, and I did not know anything about what was going to happen. 6 characters they each got a chapter, and they each came up when they were ready, and nobody had 2 chapters in a row. And I would say, where were you last time, and where do you need to go? So what would be the next step? And I just sort of did that until the thing was over.
So did you write the book chronologically, actually, as you went through?
Mostly chronologically, but there was so much information. There's so much exposition in this book, and I hate it, and I try and bury it as far as I can. So I would take, sometimes I would just write out 10 pages of the exposition, like all that on the nose stuff, just so you can see it right in front of you. Then you pluck out what's important. Then you pluck out what's really important. And then you find spots throughout it, because you can't just dump it in one spot. So
just sort of do the filling in the story, the background, and all of that.
Yeah, because one of the main characters is somebody who disappeared for 20 years. So we have to find out where he was. We have to find out what made him go. We have to find out what makes him come back. Uh, and one rule definitely in screenwriting is you never give exposition to the main characters.
Mhm.
And you let somebody else, you dump it off on someone else who says, "Oh my gosh, if we don't do this by 7 o'clock, the bank's going to close," and you're playing with fire, and they do it. So then the heroes can act.
Can be moving.
Yeah, and that they deal with emotion, and especially in a love story, you don't want information, you want emotion.
Mhm.
So it was constantly this real effort to figure out where to put this information, how to what I would do is like do everything I could to make the information entertaining. Like this is exposition, but I've got this as good as exposition could get. And then I'd say, no, because it's still exposition. So they wouldn't talk about anything at all. And something of a feeling would come up and they would talk about that. And
Yeah.
that maybe one line of the information, but that thing, when they finally stripped all the crap away, would be real. And
Were there any guides that you used for plot or structure? Were there any sort of books on writing or any of that stuff that were helpful to you as
I
you
I
read?
wish I could tell you, I think, well, I read Aristotle's Poetics because you have to read Aristotle's Poetics.
Mhm.
And that was early on. I think I did. There was a woman named Alexandra Sokolov who writes like screenwriting for novelists and novels for screenwriters. And she had a lot of really good information. But no, all I knew was you have to tell a story, you have to keep it moving. All these people on one hand want the same thing, but they all have something else that they are pursuing while this is happening. And the main character is not only going after what he's trying to go after, he has the secondary thing of trying to keep something else from happening. And so he starts the book stressed to the max. And he doesn't get any less stressed no matter what's happening.
And that was something that you, as a screenwriter, you knew that was important, that he needed to be stressed as it goes along all the way, the tension of that.
I knew that however these people came out, I knew he was going to be like a more type A active, kinesthetic kind of person, and that Goody would be cerebral, maybe a little bit slower and more thoughtful.
Mhm.
So we have you have a look before you leap guy with a he who hesitates is lost guy, and they're best friends, unlikely friends, but they're best friends. But I swear, Christina, I just said sooner or later we have to get to the scene where you meet.
Right.
So what's the next thing? You guys figure it out, and I would sit there and watch him do it.
So you felt like you were watching your characters and not having to make it happen? That's pretty great, Jeff, if that's true.
They wouldn't let me make it happen. I really, you have kids. Do you make them happen, or you just figure out how to guide them where you want them to go?
I mean, so you feel that your characters were just leaping off the page and making their own decisions? I love that idea.
I'm so crazy. I had this image of a basketball court and a coach and a bench, and each of the characters were sitting on the bench. And I'd be going up and down with the clipboard and say, okay, who's ready for a chapter? And one of them would volunteer. So I figured whatever part of my subconscious was dealing with that, here comes Mary. And so what would Mary do? And there's one chapter where I must have made grilled cheese sandwiches for my kids. And I think probably at the time I was a vegan, so I wasn't going to eat grilled cheese, but I could not get these grilled cheese sandwiches out of my head. And I went to work. So I need a scene with Mary, and I said, what are you going to do? And she says, so the whole scene, she's cooking a grilled cheese sandwich so that I could get that out of my system. And that stuff happens all the time.
All the time. Mm-hmm.
And if we're listening. So, okay, one day I got up from the breakfast table and I said to my daughter, industrial buckets of cheese, remember that? And she said, you remember it. And she was perfectly right, because that made me remember it. And there's a line in there that I just always loved about industrial buckets of cheese.
Right.
But
That's okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, I always feel, when I'm working on a novel, I always feel like flypaper, that everything sticks to me, that you have experiences and they kind of, expand in your mind and become part of your book. And I look back at my book sometimes and think, those were moments, there were little bits and pieces from life, which actually brings me to my next question. But let me first say, we have a question, I believe, and please put your questions in the Q&A, because I will answer them as we go. And I will ask them of Jeff as we go. I will address them as we go, because we'll be talking probably until, I don't know, so my time's 8:40. What time is it there? 5:40? Yeah.
Right.
So, and we welcome your questions. And Jeff, I know, is an expert in a million things, so please feel free to ask him specifically. But how?
I wanted to ask you, because you have everything that we're talking about, but you also do tons of absolutely meticulous years of research. So you have that too. So how does that work in your brain when you have all the right brain, where does this go, all the flypaper stuff, but then also all this stuff that you have to get in. And I got to tell you, what you did, I never felt like I was reading your research.
You have to throw most of the research out eventually, but you need it to just have a grounding so that you're confident enough to write the book. But your book was not set in the present day. You had to know, I know that you lived in the years of your novel, but even so, it was a long time. It was a while ago. So surely you had to look up some of the stuff.
Oh yeah, my research involved, what was the #1 song in January 1970?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Minutes, or I am pretty in a big way about story logic, but also in a small way. So I would check plane schedules and just say, now, could this guy have gotten here in that amount of time? What about time zones? There's one thing I did that I never solved and never will and could never figure out. I never comes out and says it, but the book takes place generally over a week.
Yeah.
But I can't do every night and every morning and day 1 and day 2 and day 3. So it's kind of a mix and a blend. But one thing I cheated on is that in that area at that time of year, it starts getting dark at around 3:30 or 4. So I have a lot of scenes where the day would have to last until about 8 o'clock at night to get all this in. And I looked at it over the years and I just couldn't solve it. So I just thought, I hope.
I think you got away with it. I don't think it felt like a problem. But you also wrote a lot of pre-internet time. So you didn't have, in some ways, it's easier to do that, in that, like, I was talking to Paula McLean recently about her new book, When the Stars Go Dark. And we were talking about the fact that she set her novel before the internet because it was really hard to catch serial killers at that time. They did not have the tools that they have now, and it was a completely different world. Why did you set it when you did?
Because I started writing it back then. That's how far back, and I'm sort of stuck in a pre-internet era anyway.
Look, you're on Zoom.
I'm on Zoom, dragged in at grandfather age. But yeah, I'm writing something now, a TV series. It's a romantic comedy, and that's modern, and that takes place in the internet age. But I pulled this trick where most of the story happens on an island off Maine, where there's no internet because they don't want it. They keep voting against it, and all the summer people just hate that. So, you're crossing the bay, and suddenly everybody's cell phones stop working. You come back the other way, and they all start working again. So even when I'm working with a modern world like that, it's too easy to find out anything you want. So there was suggestions to do Sleepless again and update it. And how do you update something like that? Facebook, and in 2 seconds, you know who everybody is. Mm-hmm. But I think I still write stuff from an analog world, and I guess that's just gonna be.
Okay, well, that island, whatever island you call it, is visible from my house in Maine, and it's called Sutton Island. And there are all these people who live there, and there's no internet, and they don't want it. And that's exactly, so there you are.
Yeah.
You are.
This was on Peaks Island where all this happened. We had a place there for 3 summers on Peaks Island, right outside
Well,
of
Peaks has internet. Well, now, I guess you mean this was a while ago.
Yeah. But they're not going to in the book. In
Yeah.
the series, they're not going to
Peaks
because
is beautiful, but it's very much part of the real world these days. Okay, so I wanted to ask you what you took from life, if there was a germ of this novel that really happened, or how the story sort of came out of your own life experience or stories you know.
Well, I did go to a school like that for 2 years in a pretty gritty area of Pennsylvania. It was not Dead
Not
Poets
Pocono
Society
prep.
with the green lawns and everything. Get that out of your head. This was, working class. It was a boarding school in pretty much a working class town.
What was it called? What is it called?
Do they want that? It was called Wyoming Seminary, and it wasn't in Wyoming, and it wasn't a seminary. So, try and have a normal life after that. Explaining that your whole life. But there was one teacher there who just was the teacher for everybody, and he got me through some pretty hard stuff, and I never forgot him. And like one day, almost 20 years, I just decided to drive back up to that school and see if he was there. Talk about no internet. I just went in the car to see if he was there. He was. We spent a day together. I was like 31 or 32 at the time, so I could ask him some things that you can't ask when you're a student, and he could talk to me as an adult. So on the way home from that, this story dropped into my lap, and all I knew at the time was there's going to be a teacher, there's going to be 3 kids, there's going to be a betrayal, and one of the kids is going to run away, and I think he's going to go to India. That's all I knew. And from that, in bits and pieces, these characters grew, the story grew, they did what they needed. One guy walks out a door and picks up a best friend that I had no idea was going to be in this book. Mm-hmm. And then she becomes a major sub-character. So when you asked how did I know to do this, I didn't know how to do this.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that you went to a school like that, because it does feel very grounded. Like we feel what it's like to be a student in that place and to live there.
This stuff about signing in and signing out and dinner being an hour earlier. It was a great experience. The people that I went there with, I'm still friendly with, lots of them. And most of them have this just unbreakable loyalty to the place. Some of them, it's poison. They never want to hear about it again. But for the most part, first of all, high school is just so emotional anyway.
Yeah.
But you're away from home. You're not going home to your parents every night. You're going home to other kids. And, you're looked over by a teacher who says, okay, shut up, it's 11 o'clock. And that was a great way to live your life. You're just constantly around, contemporaries. And I love that part.
So you weren't lonely there?
How far do you want? I was probably as lonely as a person can get. I just didn't know it.
That's funny. Why do you say that?
I'm gonna just spill my purse on this whole thing here, Christina. I probably was a lonely kid my whole life and didn't know it. And
like many writers.
A lot of us, I was never like the totally weird kid that was outside of everything, and I was never the totally popular kid who was inside of everything. But I could ride the border of all these different groups, and drop into either one. So I had friends, I had people around. I wasn't sitting in a corner carving things into cement. But you never know who you are inside. And there was a lot going on. I lost my dad in between. That's one thing that really did happen in between 10th and 11th grade. And so I'm a 15-year-old kid going back to school, and everything's normal, but nothing's normal. And
you can't quite translate that experience to everyone else. I mean, you can't sort of come back and say, I'm in mourning. It doesn't.
I didn't know what mourning was. I did not know what anything was. I just probably had this shock program running, but I was away at school and nothing looked any different. And if I liked a girl, that was just as important as it was when he was alive. And, you know, he was he was a great person, but it was not easy to be his son. So it was fine with me to be away from the daily check-ins. It was great to have them at arm's length 100 miles away. And but the things that happen there, and like you said, you know, you're just that flypaper, you're collecting it all through life.
Yeah.
It's like if every piece of clothing you ever wore in your life was rolled up in a ball in the closet, you know, and each one of those things was a memory. Then somehow that red sneaker comes out, and somehow that blue shirt comes out when you need it. So there's things in that book that I remember from being 4 years old, and then there's things that happened in February, you know, next to each other.
And then there are things that you completely made up, I'm sure, out of the blue.
No idea where they came from. You know, you get that. Your best passages are just something happens. They call it flow, but something happens, and you only know you're there because you can physically see your hands.
Right.
But you're not there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I would look back at sections and say, I remember being here, but I don't remember writing that. I don't remember knowing that.
That's actually the next question I was going to ask, which was about the process of writing. What surprised you about it? What did you not expect about writing a novel?
How stubborn these guys were. That
guys?
could have been the characters.
Oh, your characters, yeah.
How stubborn they were, how individual they were.
I thought you meant the publishing world, which is another whole story.
Should we take another hour? That's the thing that was driving me crazy during this one the most was it was just really hard to sort out the story problems that I'd set up for myself. And so no matter what else I was working on, there was a section of hard drive up here just going, where is he? How do you get him home? How does he talk when he comes back? What does the audience need to know about a guy who runs off and becomes a Buddhist monk? Are they going to expect somebody to come floating in? Or are they going to expect a cult member? Or, you know, they don't know. They're just normal guys like rabbis and priests, and they just went that way. So how do I lay that education down, but without going into a thing about Buddhism that nobody wants to hear?
Right.
And so it was constantly balanced. And I guess in a movie, yeah, you are constantly sorting problems, but I think your destinations come sooner. And so there's a much more immediacy to it. And there are times I long for it.
You're also working with a group of people. I mean, I know you're often writing by yourself, but eventually it seems more collaborative from the outside. I've never written a screenplay, but I'm now involved with a couple of my books in some of the production stuff that may or God knows. But anyway, the point is, it seems that there's this team often who are, you know, sort of all working toward the same goal.
There's real collaborative and there's pretend collaborative. And sometimes you think you're collaborating, but it's just kind of a courtesy. But when it's real collaboration, yeah, the minute as a screenwriter, the minute you cash that check, it's not yours. And you're there at the mercy of whoever's working on it, the director, the producer. Sometimes the actors want to bring other people in. And so there's nothing you have to do if they come up with something and you just go, look, this is no longer the same story. You know, I mean, I can do this and this and this, and it'll be this story expanded in ways I can't imagine. But this means it's no longer the same story. In that situation, somebody's in the other room on the phone talking to somebody's agent for another writer.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and a book, it's just you. And, you know, I know, you know, Brooke Warner, the publisher for Spark, and
yes,
she and I went head to head a lot of times on things that nobody had been able to get me to change.
So she was your editor.
I don't know. I don't want to offend. She gave me lots and lots and lots of feedback. I have never, I've only done my own editing. I can't imagine what it's like to have somebody take over something I did and edit it and hand it back to me.
But so, feedback is a form of editing. I mean, she may not have put words on the page, but did you not work with any outside editor or anybody? You just did your own?
No, believe it or not, my daughter is a brilliant editor, and she went through.
I believe it.
A couple of sorry.
I said I believe it.
She went through a couple of passes with me, and her suggestions were great. Probably more more comprehensive stuff from her than from anybody else. But sometimes somebody would read it, they'd tell me one thing, and that one thing made a difference.
Give an example.
The one I don't want to give you is somebody said, you got to write the sex scene, and I didn't want to write a sex scene. I hate those. I don't know how to do it. And it's just, but she was right. Someone else said, friend Stephanie Arnold said in a scene that's kind of near the end, kind of a climactic scene where the two people who might have been running off together make their decision. She said, I need one beat there where he says to her, he's not running away this time. And she gave me this whole long thing, and I just added a line. He turns around, he says, I'm walking, I'm not running. And that's it. And that made a huge, huge difference. So sometimes it was one line like that. But I did get lots of feedback. A lot of people said what I worked really hard on was, why did this teacher call for these kids? Even after it's explained, even after you've been through the whole thing and the whole puzzle, not really a mystery, it's a puzzle, that when the whole puzzle is complete, there were still some people saying, I really don't understand his attraction to these kids. And what is that bond? And knowing the craft and knowing within the structure what I had to work with, I gave each kid like a big signature scene with him. And I addressed it in every way that I could. There's no more addressing of it I can do. So if someone has that problem, I've worked on it until it can't be, I polish this thing as shiny as it's going to get.
Well, I was just thinking that. And by the way, I want to say to people, please put questions. We only have one so far. Put questions in the box, because this is your last chance for tonight. Jeff is going to leave before 8 o'clock and my time, 9 o'clock, I guess. And I know he has a lot of expertise, so you should ask him anything you want about any aspect of either business, film or television, I suppose, or writing novels. But Jeff, it sounds to me, and this is how I work, so it just sounds familiar, that you get your work to a stage that's pretty clean before you really show it. And then when you talked about your friend saying you need a beat, those are final draft points. Those are not early suggestions, right?
Yeah. I would, whenever I considered that at this point, I've taken this draft as far as I can take it, maybe not ready for publishing, but this draft as far as I can take it, then I'd hand it around and people would read it, and their suggestions, I don't remember getting a bad one. I really don't.
That's great. I mean, sometimes you're right that sometimes just the smallest thing can shift the way you think about a scene and help you kind of have clarity on how it works.
Oh, and there's another, probably the biggest one. There's a big reveal, and I can't spoil that, but you know what I'm talking about. And my assistant Amy Young read the book, and she said she just found this like very minor, but also could be wide open bit of story logic that wouldn't make sense. And so I had to add one more thing in that big reveal so that it would be completely believable. And it gives like, and when the tension music starts in a mystery or something, or boom, 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 it was that kind of moment, and I didn't milk it enough, and I didn't make it clear enough. Mm-hmm. So she said, you got to do something about that line, and I did something about that line. And
did you give her a raise?
I keep offering. I'm not going to say this, but she keeps saying she doesn't want one. I'm not giving anybody any information because she'll leave, and I don't want that to happen.
Just keep it quiet. Keep it quiet. Okay, so we have some great questions, but also I get to ask you a couple more quickly. Carmine the Mobster is such a complex character and so interesting, and I wondered if where did he come from for you?
I don't know. One thing I was aware of is you cannot write Don Corleone again.
No.
You have to stay away from that. I mean, there are ways that all those old world guys are similar, but this was a guy who, again, I didn't know him until he started talking and acting out his scenes. There was no character biography of Carmine and, you know, of each of these characters stapled up on a wall.
Yeah.
You know, he was tough. But also the scenes that are really, where there's times he's just so tender. And again, that surprised me. You know, tell me about my grandson, that kind of thing. And getting upset that a son who he just mistreated all his life wouldn't tell him about a death in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't coming from an authoritarian place. It was coming from, dude, when it's all put aside, I know I was horrible to you. I abandoned you. I hit you with fan belts. I did all this crap. But you lost a kid and I lost it. That's a moment where we dropped this shit, you know, and wasn't given an opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the complexity of that. So first of all, I need to report that Amy says, I will not leave.
Thank you, Amy.
And she says, Jeff is so generous. We're family at this point. So that is very disappointing to the rest of us, but it sounds very nice for you.
And for all you people getting extremely hammered right now, Amy has provided me with tea and biscuits.
Nice. That's good.
Mind the Gap theme. And if you read the book, there is a Mind the Gap theme going on. And so this is very appropriate. Thank you, Amy. I'll be eating cookies later on.
Sustenance for your book club, for your book tour. Okay, so Stacey Ellis, and by the way, I'm not in my usual Zoom room, so my glasses are all reflective, and I feel badly about it. Sorry, people, feel bad. Sorry. Okay, Stacey says, I think the style of time transition between past and present events is very interesting. In some, there's an indicator that you're about to read about a past event, but some transitions there. Some transitions there isn't except for italic print, which makes you curious and keep reading and want to find out that past event. What is the secret to that?
I really hate that. The secret is every time I got in trouble, I would just go somewhere else. And so knowing when to go into the past, the only scientific decisions I made about when to start these flashbacks was that I wanted to have a good chunk of the book down first, because in the early drafts, those flashbacks were coming sooner. And I don't even know if I told the present story in order.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling the story in the order of how people remembered it. So, you know, you can go back to your high school, remember something that happened in senior year, and then see something that happened the first day you got there. The memories are triggered, you know, out of order. And I tried that, and it was just too damn confusing for people. So I laid out the chronology of the present time events, and each past time event was there to underscore, you know, to support the present time event so you can understand it. And, you know, the first meeting with Griffin and Pick, that first meeting had to be his flashback, because here comes Pick to see this guy in a hospital and he's completely unresponsive. And so what does he go back to but a memory of the first time they met? And when Pick has his first flashback, he goes back to a memory of where he and Goody first met, and how just quickly and solidly they became best friends. I didn't have the luxury in this kind of structure of making a point 3 or 4 times. Mm-hmm. So the chapter up in the bell tower, that was Griffin and Goody just getting that solid. And also the chapter in the rowboat where Goody just completely loses his, you know, everything he's been holding in about his father's death and everything comes out there. And and with Pick, the way he was dropped off, for sure, I mean, that's gotta grab your heart. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So each one had to be emblematic, and it had to carry the water for all the other times that somebody might have wanted to see. You know, if it was a book about only those 3, yeah, but the people needed real estate in the book.
There are a lot of characters you're keeping track of through the book, that you are keeping track of. But I do have to say, for those of you who haven't read it yet, it's not confusing. You really do feel that you know how the voices change, and you know everything is identified very clearly. The italics help, all of that. You must have worked hard on that.
That part took 2 years. Two of the 4 or 5 was just to make it not confusing.
For sure.
How to order those first chapters, how to introduce these people, you know, and they're all linked. And then how do you get inside their heads? And I knew there's 6 of them and each one gets a chapter. So by the end of chapter 6, you know the cast of characters and you know kind of how they're related. And that's when the fun starts, because now you start mixing up the ingredients, and they're only there for maximum combustion possibility.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Shane Sims asks, Jeff, which character do you most identify with?
Shane. First of all, Shane, you should know I got your coffee cup here. It's my
Nice.
stepson. So Grand Canyon.
Oh,
My name's
hi,
Jeff,
Shane.
and the easy thing to say is Goody, but it's a yes and no answer. More things happen to Goody that actually happened to me. So he got a lot of my events and my life events, but he didn't respond to them the way that I did. So, I mean, it's a pretty easy guess. And this is a Jewish kid who's cerebral and he's looking for meaning and he's looking to be grounded in something, and probably smack in the middle of an identity crisis. And in the middle of that, his father dies and there's not enough of a relationship for even know what to grieve.
Yeah.
And this really exciting kid comes into his life and they're instant best friends. And he doesn't even know that the guy's got a crush on his girlfriend. And when he got the crush on his girlfriend, he didn't know it was his girlfriend. So, you know, that's a lot going on. And they again, they got themselves through it. I would just say, okay, you got to be in the same room now. What's going to happen? Or a really big thing structurally that I had to do, I learned this the hard way with the romantic comedy that I wrote. And oh my God, this was right after Sleepless. Well, it was called Longfellow Bridge, and eventually it got made into a network movie called Sealed with a Kiss that I love and that I'm proud of. But it started out as a spec script, and it was the one I wrote. I was working on it like right after the Oscar nomination for Sleepless, so you could imagine what I was going to get for that if this thing sold. And I missed something, and again, most of the people don't know. They don't know why they don't like something or why it didn't work. That's our job, to do the diagnostic. And what I did wrong was the couple that you want to be together. If there's going to be a third element, you have to meet the couple you want to be together first, and have that third element be the outside force. So I didn't have that. I had Laura and Goody were established. They were in love, or at least he was in love, and so I had to come up with a scene that made Pick not seem like a predator, not seem like just somebody that, hey, I like her, I want to go, this is high school, I can do whatever I want. But I had to write a scene that showed they really had a rapport. They really hit it off. And that was the scene where he discovers them, doing a service project and cleaning grease traps. And the 3 girls are singing, and one of them is Laura, and he gets thunderstruck, and she makes up an excuse to take him to a place that he already knows how to get to, but he's lying because there she is. So I had to show this is a really sweet, innocent relationship.
Yeah, I love that part.
But I broke the rule, and the rule is generally we're going to have a rooting interest, for the people that we see together in the first place. But even before that, you saw Pick and Laura together in present time, and they're in a nasty way. They're just in a rough way. So here comes this guy. Here's this bad marriage, not a bad marriage, but a really shaky, faltering marriage. And those are the ingredients. What's going to happen?
That's wonderful. Okay, we have so many questions that I'm going to we're going to go faster here. So Thomas asks, Thomas Earn, to both of you, although I'm not answering, we're moving on. What drives you to write? Passion, fear?
It's just what I do. It's what I've done all my life. It's how I communicate with people, and how I can, in a weird way, leave something behind, which is, as a little kid, Thomas, I would write notes on the refrigerator, and they would stay up there for a week because they were so funny. So I would be in another room and hear somebody laughing at something I did a week ago. I thought, this is pretty cool, because right now I'm not working, but I just got this laugh. And so I started to realize the concept of royalties. But it's, I don't want to sound like a cliche. If I could have done anything else, I would have done something else, because this is really hard work.
It's really hard.
It's lonely as shit. And whenever you get somebody's opinion, you got to learn what to do with your emotions when you're hearing it, because you put so much into it. And in the beginning, there's a lot of stuff you're not going to get. So you're going to hear more from people about, I didn't get this right. And woo,
Yeah.
it's hard.
A lot of rejection at every level, all the time, in every way. My son is a beginning composer for film scoring, and it's a really intense world, all of that. And I just have to say to him all the time that when you're going to be a creative, that's the life you're signing on for.
I was told by an early mentor, he said the cream rises to the top. And what he didn't say about Hollywood was that that's not the only thing at the top, but the cream does rise to the top. So all you can do is figure out how to be the cream.
Yeah.
And that's the only job we have.
Yeah.
You can't control any of this other stuff.
That's good. So Chase Lang asks, since you started writing the book, have you had any life experience that you've meaningfully reflected into the book? Since you began writing it, did you have, after you started, and obviously you said it was a long period, were there things that happened to you that you worked into the book?
Oh, all the time. All the time. You're going to ask for an example. I'm not sure right now I can come back to that, but all the time. If I found out something, just some interesting, I don't know, statistic or fact about something, I would, if it would work, I would pop that in.
Well, flypaper, we were sort of talking about that, weren't we?
And most of the time it's that big jumble of clothes in the closet. Although, Christina, I have a feeling your clothes in the closet are pretty well labeled and folded.
No. Oh my God. No.
I'm happy to hear that.
Disaster, big mess. I mean, all of it's a mess. I feel like I'm a wreck when I'm really in it deeply. Anyway, but I hear you, Jeff. Okay, so Gary asks, with a screenplay, you have to give your story up once the director, producer, actors take over. What was it like to hold on to your story till the end?
It's a really big grin is what it's like to hold on to my story to the end. I only had to deal with people that I respected, whose feedback I was lucky enough to get. And then with Brooke and I, we were in this together. This isn't a traditional, we're the publisher and you're the...
Can you talk for like 30 seconds about your publishing structure? Because I think people don't know what it is.
Well, there is publishing. There's what everybody thinks they want, oh my God, Random House and big thing in the store windows in New York Times. And there's digital publishing, self-publishing, which I was ready to do at one point. And now there's hybrid publishing, where there's also vanity publishing, where you pay a company a lot of money to publish your book. Mm-hmm. What Brooke Warner came up with, she was a traditional publisher. And in that era where you liked a writer, you developed the writer, you pitched the writer, you stuck with the writer and 2, 3, 4 novels, it started switching to, here's this cookbook. And Brooke didn't like that, so she started her own company. And I don't know if she created the business model, but the business model is your business partners. You share the expense of the production of the book. I wasn't paying her to publish it. We were in it together, which meant we made decisions together, which meant that thing that you never want to happen, which is you get a book and you take all the time to write this book, and oh my God, I'm with a publisher, I'm with Simon and you're calling everybody and they're setting up all the book tours and all that stuff, and it doesn't do well. And 2 weeks later, it's gone and you can't say anything, and it's gone. Your percentage is gone. Nobody likes to be associated with something once it starts to get a stench to it, and they disappear, and your wonderful friends at the publishing house disappear first of all, just by contract. Brooke can't do that, but I only have a contract with her because of the kind of person she is. I don't need a contract with her. I will do this again anyway, just because I can participate in the process. I'm not being told.
So just to be clear to any writers out there who are looking for it, are interested in this, Brooke Warner, who is an old friend and started this press, She Writes Press, and it now has many different parts. But Spark, your publishing part is a separate wing, but she's sort of got.
Yeah, I don't have the correct amount of femininity to be in Spark Press, because that's all women. And that's why it was really cool about meeting Brooke, because it wasn't transactional. It was just, and I only think I saw her the last night or two at that Kauai conference. We're at this big dinner table with Abe and a couple of things, but I got a sense from who she was and from how everybody was with her. I mean, Amy Ferris and how they, just the love. And I think, well, all these people, and I really liked her. Didn't have much contact, and it was great because there was nothing I could want from her. So it just had that easy. And then the next year I found out she has other imprints, and they don't do only women. And so Amy and Andy Ross and I got it to Brooke at the second year in 2019. And she said, I got one of the sweetest emails. It's the one we all want to get. It says, I love it. I want to publish it. Let's go. And
perfect. Okay, we have like 1 minute, so we have 2 questions left. When writing book, movie, TV, does it play and unfold like a movie in your mind's eye, or are there words that come together, or some other version? This is from Jesse Elliott.
It unfolds like a movie in my eye. That's something that I have to force on it, because I have to come up with imagery. And thank God for rock and roll. Thank God for movie dialogue, because rock and roll lyrics, the rock poets, Dylan and all, Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell and Lennon McCartney, they teach you about imagery and brevity and just beauty in a way that made it possible. Those things I really had to massage. The dialogue I didn't. I had to race to keep up with it. I think
Jeff, was there any music you listened to as you wrote?
I listen almost always to subliminal music on YouTube that has different, megahertz frequencies for whatever it is I'm dealing with. If I want to stop procrastination, they have one. And so it's space music. I don't even notice it's happening, but it's on pretty much all day long.
I love that. All right, we have a perfect last question from Neil Barron. Well, first of all, Nikki Bonfilio says, Jeff, I love your book. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah. So Neil says, who were some of your mentors along the way? What role did they play in your success?
Real quick, rattling it off, there was a film school teacher who I tried a fast one in an exercise, and he caught me, and I went out to apologize to him. And he said, listen, you're going to be one of the ones that makes it. And to a 19-year-old kid who was extremely lost and in film school, that was necessary. That was great. A guy named Alan Ritzko, who taught me movie lighting. Conrad Hall, the cinematographer, who was my hero and actually let me come out and talk to him when I was in California and gave me lots of advice. He's the guy that told me to be a writer. But I think the biggest mentor was my grandmaster, Chaucer Park, who taught me Taekwondo. I walked into his place when I was 30, and I did not like this guy at all. And I wanted to rebuild into somebody that I liked. So I'm almost there.
Jeff, we like you, and we're glad. It sounds like you like yourself.
Yeah, the biggest mentor in my life was, I called him Master Park. He was a father to me. I miss him every day. He died 2 months before my mother did, so it was like losing parents all over again. But he's here all the time. All I got to do is stand a certain way sometimes, and he's there. And he really gave me everything I need to learn about being a man that my dad didn't have time for.
We could go on for 5 more hours, but welcome back. I'll bow out, but it's been just a total pleasure and delight. And I'm so honored to share the night of this fabulous book, the pub date.
And let's not forget Christina Kline's Exiles, which, have another conversation about your books, Christina. And
we'll talk about that next time. Okay.
I didn't get a chance to show you the moose, but here's your moose from Maine.
My Maine moose. I love it. Thank you so much.
Just in case that didn't work, Christina, in case the conversation flagged, I was prepared to go all the way.
Oh my God.
This hat, and and I don't drink, so this is real.
You would fit right in Maine, I have to say.
Thank you.
Well, Christina Baker Kline, thank you for hosting. And I look forward to you coming to talk about your next book with us. Please buy The Exiles. And Jeff Arch, what an honor, pleasure it was.
Thank you.
Attachments is amazing. I'm really enjoying it. So
Thank you.
keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
And-
I don't know who's on except for a lot of family, man, but I don't know who else is on or how you do, how many, but whoever's on here took your time. Thank you so much. I hope you like the book. I hope you love the book, and I hope you tell people you love the book. And if you're in Santa Barbara, go to Chaucer's.
Well, thank you. And thank you everyone on Zoom and on YouTube for joining us. Please have a safe evening and take care. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.